So we have something known as one average value. Average value. Second thing is RMS value or effective value of AC quantity. Okay. Other than the peak value and instantaneous value. So when you think about AC quantity, AC current or voltage, I can say it is an instantaneous value, or it's a peak value, or I can say it's an average value, or I can say it is the effective value. So peak value we have discussed. It's the maximum value, the amplitude, the maximum value that the alternating quantity can acquire both in the positive as well as a negative direction. Now coming to average value. Average value, the definition, should I dictate or would you look into your note textbooks? Someone should say, Varsha.
Ma'am, can you say not everyone don't have textbook?
Okay, average value or mean value. Just can you take it down? Average value or mean value is that steady current. Is that steady current that transfers across any circuit the same amount of charge that is transferred by an alternating quantity within the same time. Now, Varsha, I have already uploaded the 2 reference books in your classrooms. You can refer to that also. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So, why I dictated this is because in the case of average value, what we are dealing with is the charge. Okay. Charge in the sense, what I had said is, what is average value? Average value is the value of the DC current. Okay. What is that DC current which is able to transfer the same amount of charge that is being transferred by the alternating current in the same time? Or suppose I have an alternating current. This alternating current in 5 seconds transfers some amount of charge to the circuit. Okay. I am denoting this AC current in terms of its DC equivalent. So in DC equivalent, because I am thorough with the DC equivalent, I know how much of the DC works for me, whether 5 volt or 5 ampere works for me. So I am always writing, or I am always referring this AC current also in terms of my DC quantity. So average value is that DC current, the equivalent DC current that is able to transfer the same charge as is possible by the alternating current in the same time, which means if I have a AC current like this, okay, suppose it's a sine wave itself. If I have an AC current like this and it is transferring some amount of positive charge here, some amount of negative charge here within a time, say 5 seconds, I am thinking about an equivalent DC which is able to transfer the same amount of charge with the same time. That value is called average value. What you have to understand is average value is the value of a steady state, steady current, DC current, which is able to transfer the same amount of charge as is possible by this AC within the same time. Now, always remember, average value or mean value is, how do you calculate that value? Average value or mean value is the area under the curve of the waveform, okay, by base length. Base length. Now, if you look into this particular waveform, sine wave, it's a symmetrical wave. In symmetrical wave, because you have one half positive half cycle as well as a negative half cycle are the same or are symmetrical to each other. So whatever have been transferred from 0 to pi in the positive direction, it is being taken away in the negative direction, which means if I find out the average value here, I would get it as 0. The mean value will be 0. So in the case of symmetrical waveforms, remember, in the case of symmetrical waveforms, you find the average value for one half cycle only. In the case of symmetrical waveforms, you find whenever you are asked to find out the average value, you need to find out the average value for one half cycle only. Example, in the case of sine wave. Similarly, but in the case of unsymmetrical waveforms, we'll come to unsymmetrical waveforms also. In the case of unsymmetrical waveforms, one full cycle is to be considered. Because why? Unsymmetrical means one half will not be the same as the other half. And so you need to consider the full cycle together, or else you will be losing some information. Because if you're confining your derivation only for one half cycle, what is happening in the other half cycle, which is unsymmetrical, is not known to you. Which means when it is a symmetrical waveform, you have to limit it. When you find out the average value, you have to limit it to half cycle, because otherwise your mean value will become 0. If it's an unsymmetrical waveform, you have to find out the average value for the full cycle also. One full cycle. Okay. Now let's find out the average value of a sinusoidal wave. Average value of a sine wave or a sinusoidal current. Let's see its current. The same applies to voltage as well. Okay. So let's take a sinusoidal waveform, omega t, drawing the sine wave. Okay, 0, pi, 2 pi. As you know, you need to find out only for one half cycle, because it is a symmetrical wave. I'm going to take one small section here, okay, of incremental width d theta, and let this ordinate be I. My aim is to find out the area, isn't it? So what I want to find out is the mean value, or the average value is the area under the curve, here from 0 to pi, isn't it? 0 to pi divided by the base length is again pi. In order to find out the area, I can take a small section like this and integrate between 0 to pi, isn't it? So what is the area will be integral 0 to pi. I'm taking only half cycle, I d theta. Is that much clear to you? I'm going to find out this area. Okay. Okay. So that is equal to, and next, this will be the standard procedure. If you can adopt the standard procedure throughout, you will be able to find out the value for any current or any kind of waveform. Okay. Now, next, my idea is to replace this small I with the relevant equation. In my case, the relevant equation is to write for the sine wave. Okay. So small I is equal to Im sine theta, which I know. So integral 0 to pi, instead of small I will be writing Im sine theta d theta. sign actually, whenever I write, I am at sometimes going wrong. You have to practice it like small sign, small s. Okay, sine theta d theta. So this will be equal to Im. Integral sine theta will be minus cos theta from 0 to pi. That is equal to 2Im. Okay. Now, what is the average value? Average value will be the area under the curve, that is 2Im. How did I find out the area? I took a small strip and then found out the area under the curve by integrating between that 0 to pi. 2Im, that is 2Im divided by what is the base length here? This is 0 to pi, pi minus 0, pi. So this is actually the average value, 2Im by pi. Sometimes you write it as 0.637 Im. Usually I remember it as 2Im by pi. This is the average value of a sinusoidal current. Okay. Hope this is clear to you. Okay. Now, shall I rub this off? Is it okay that I can rub this off?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then comes the next value, which is the effective value or the RMS value. What was our the average value? Average value was taken as the equivalent DC or the steady current, which could transfer the same amount of charge that the AC quantity is able to transfer within a given time. But then they found out that that was not enough, because every time it's a symmetrical waveform, it is going to 0. So it's really difficult for you to find out the effect of that. So they came up with a effective value, because we know that in most cases we are using a DC current to do some sort of a work. Any work is energy or heat or whatever you write as I squared RT. So this AC quantity also, we want to know how much of work can be extracted by this AC quantity. If I pass 5 ampere current, is it able to do the same work as a 5 ampere DC current? Or is it able to do the same amount of work as a 15 ampere current? So that is defined by RMS value. RMS or effective value of an alternating current is again that steady current, equivalent steady current, which while flowing through a given resistance for a given time produces the same amount of heat as is produced by the alternating current when it flows to the same amount, the same resistance to the same time. That is effectively, if you have a DC current and an AC, if AC produces I squared RT in some resistance for some time, that should be produced by the DC also, I squared RT. This I DC, this is IAC. So you equate this and say that IDC is the IRMS value. I hope you understood. RMS value is not actually the value of the alternating current that you're talking about. Same as in the cases average value, you're talking about an equivalent steady current or equivalent DC current, which is capable of doing the same work as is done by the AC. Because we know how much of the current, how much of DC current can do how much work. We know that equation I squared RT. So write down this, the effective or RMS value, the effective or RMS. What is RMS? We'll come to later on to the expansion. The effective or RMS value of an alternating current is that steady current. Is that steady current or a DC current? Is that steady current which when flowing through a given resistance, for a given time, I squared RT RM T, for a given resistance, for a given time, produces produces the same amount of heat, I squared RT, produces the same amount of heat as produced by the alternating quantity, when flowing through the same resistance, for the same time. Okay, which means that if I say that the RMS value of a certain alternating quantity is 5 ampere, if I have I'm saying that the RMS value of an alternating quantity is 5 ampere, it simply means that this alternating quantity or AC current will do work or produce heat at the same rate as 5 ampere DC under similar conditions. When I say that I hope you understood the concept. When I say that the AC current is having 5 ampere RMS value, it simply means that I am referring to a DC current 5 ampere, which is able to produce the same amount of heat or same amount of work under similar conditions. That is all. Okay. Okay. Now we are going on to the derivation as before. Okay. So consider a half cycle like this. I am considering only a half cycle, okay, of alternating non-sinusoidal waveform. I'm just taking so that you can understand that for finding out the RMS value, you can find out for any kind of waveform. I'm taking a non-sinusoidal waveform like this, only a half cycle, okay. This much is, say, T. This much is T for a time T. And I am going to, this is a non-sinusoidal current flowing through, this is non-sinusoidal current I flowing through a resistance R for a time T seconds. This is the waveform, half cycle. Now let me divide this into a number of parts like this, small parts, I1, I2, I3, etc. Each of duration T by N, etc. Now, if capital I is the RMS value, I squared RT should be equal to what? I1 squared RT by N plus I2 squared RT by N plus etc. up to IN squared RT by N. Or I can write this as I1 squared R plus I2 squared R plus etc. up to IN squared R into T by N plus T by N. I took it outside. Okay. Into T. Into T. Or no. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, T. That is equal to I1 squared R plus I2 squared R plus etc. up to IN squared R into T by N. This is my RMS value. This is what I want to find out. So cancelling off the quantities here, I get the RMS value square. This is I squared, or I will be equal to square root of I1 squared plus I2 squared plus etc. up to IN squared by En. This is why it is called as root of the mean of the squares. Root mean square value or RMS value. It's the root mean of the squares. Okay. This is also same as, this is also, when it comes to a waveform, I can say this, we have indirectly taken its area. So area of squared wave divided by base length. If you remember, in the previous case, what did we take? To find out the average value, you took the area of the wave, half cycle or full cycle, as the case may be, and divided it by the base length. Here, you will be taking the area of the squared waveform. Okay. So I hope this derivation is almost clear to you. It's okay. I think it's simple, not much of a problem. What we are dealing with is IRMS, to find out this IRMS. So all this were gone, and then you get this. This is from where you get this name for it, root of the mean of the square. Okay. Now, as before, let me try to derive the RMS value of a sinusoidal wave, or sinusoidal current, or sinusoidal voltage, whatever it may be. This is the same procedure. So this is the sine wave that we are talking about. This is T, this is I, T or theta or omega T. Now, for finding out the RMS value, you need to square it. Now, this waveform is not of much importance here. As you can see, when you are squaring it, you don't have a negative half cycle. Negative into negative becomes positive, whatever. So here again, I have to take a small strip here in the squared waveform. This is I squared waveform. Okay. Okay, and I get theta, d theta. This is the d theta. And then when I find out the area of squared wave. Now, let me also explain to you that when you find out the RMS value, it is irrelevant whether you find it out for half wave or full wave. If for symmetrical waves, RMS value can be found out for half cycle. But if it is an unsymmetrical waveform, here you know that sine wave is a symmetrical wave, so you need to find out only for half cycle. But if it is a unsymmetrical waveform, you definitely have to find out for a full cycle, otherwise you will lose information in the other half. Okay, so here area of the squared wave in a half cycle is sufficient, half cycle, which means you will be finding out integral 0 to pi. This is pi, isn't it? So your half cycle, 0 to pi, I squared d theta. Remember, I squared, the other was I. So this will be equal to, now you know I is equal to Im sine theta. I squared will be Im squared sine squared theta. Okay, so integral 0 to pi Im squared sine squared theta d theta, that will be equal to Im squared. Instead of sine squared theta, you can write 1 minus cos 2 theta by 2. You are more of an expert in these differentiations than me. You are using it now also in your mathematics. So this is equal to Im squared by 2 into theta minus, after integrating you get theta minus sine 2 theta by 2 between the limits 0 to pi. 0 to pi. You will end up with Im squared by 2 into pi. Now you have not reached the final answer, you have only done the area. IRMS will be equal to square root of area. I think I have not put that square root in the previous slide. Okay, area of the wave by base length. The area of the wave in one half cycle in our case, that is equal to square root of whatever you got here. Im squared by 2, Im squared by 2 pi divided by base length, as you know, is only 0 to pi. This is also within the square root, and you will get this as Im by root 2, which now I usually write it as Im by root 2. Some people write it as 0.707 Im. So this is the RMS value of a sinusoidal wave. I'll stop the class now. I'm sure all of you will be very tired, but with two more terminologies. That is all. Form factor. Form factor is nothing but RMS value by average value. RMS value by average value. Remember, RAF, RMS value by average value gives you form factor. Okay. So in the case of a sinusoidal waveform, it will be Im by 2, or let us write it in terms of voltage. Vm, RMS value got as Vm by root 2 or Im by root 2, as the case may be, divided by what was the average value of a sine wave? 2 Im by pi, isn't there? Or 2 Vm by pi, which you will get as 1.11. This is very important. Now, form factor is an indication or a measure of its peakiness of the waveform. Peakiness means if it's a triangular waveform, form factor will be higher, and so on. So, form factor. Last thing that you'll be dealing with today is peak factor. Peak factor, which is the same as crest factor, is equal to maximum value or the peak value, maximum value by RMS value. Here you should note that the RMS value comes in the denominator. Okay, so that is why I said RAF, remember that. In the other case, RMS comes in the denominator. Here, for a sine wave, it is Vm or Im, as the case may be, divided by Vm by root 2. That is equal to 1.414. This is true for any sine wave. Okay, so this is what we will stop with today. In the next class, we will be dealing with unsymmetrical waveforms and some other waveforms, where you will be deriving the average as well as the average value as well as the RMS value in similar. We'll be sticking on to the same style of derivation so that it will be much more easy for you. I hope you have understood whatever I have dealt with today. If you have any doubts, please remain and ask, or you can leave. Thank you so much for the patient listening today. I have been able to cover some major portions here. This is a very importance for you. You will be dealing with such kind of waveforms throughout your syllabus, throughout your course, and later on also. So thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.